KwaZulu-Natal is bearing the brunt of food shortages caused by the attempted insurrection. Hundreds of shopping centres in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng were looted and burned, with damages running into billions of rand. Thoko Didiza, the Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development Minister, joins me from Pretoria now for more on this. Minister, very good to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us. I know that you've been meeting up with stakeholders to address the food shortage problem. Tell us what you've come up with, please.
Thank you very much to you and your listeners tonight at ENCA. Indeed, one has been meeting with the various stakeholders in the food sector. That would be your retail groups, such as your spas, your ShopRite, those that have a footprint across the country. We're also meeting with the producers, particularly farmers, because they're important as part of this value chain. We've also been meeting with the millers, particularly in the KZN area, those who are producing sugar, and the freight logistics companies, those who move the food from one point to the other.
All right, what sort of problems have you identified? I mean, I know that you've said earlier on that we don't have a shortage of food, but it's a supply chain that's proving to be a problem, isn't it?
Yes. One of the things that in our discussion we agreed was assessing the availability of food in the provinces of Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, but also across the country, looking at where that food can be moved from one point to the next. The critical issues that were raised by the group which we raised with the security cluster was the security of those centers where food is available, but also protecting the areas where people are going to be shopping so that you don't have the anxiety from your shopkeepers, particularly your retail group, that they may be under threat of attack when they have opened their shops. We also had to look at, giving some of their companies who are moving the food from one point to the other, and the opening up of the N3 and the N2, which are important networks for the movement of the food. And I must say that one of the things that have happened in the past 2 days have actually seen us being able to reach a number of metropoles as well as the rural areas where food needs. Yes, there has been some queues in certain areas because people where the towns have been gutted and the shops destroyed, they've not been able to go to those centers as they would otherwise, and therefore they had to move to the closest town. But I must thank particularly the retailers that have allowed to open for longer hours in order to make sure that those people who are in the queues, they will get food no matter how late that is.
All right. The DA is calling for an emergency oversight visit to the rural parts to assess the damages and needs of farmers and communities. They suspect that we don't really know the full extent of the desperation, the needs and the impact that this rioting has had. How likely are we to get a full picture of this, and when?
Well, let me say, political parties as well as parliamentarians, as part of their oversight responsibility, they are at liberty to do that. And I think it would add in their views to get a sense of comfort whether indeed everybody has had availability of food. Yesterday, for instance, Mpangeni and Tubatu are in contact with almost all the mayors of KwaZulu-Natal, working with the MEC of local government and traditional authorities so that we actually get a sense of where are the pressures, what can be done. And I must that some of the municipalities have actually come up with innovative ways where they've used some of their multi-purpose centers as makeshift shops where some of the shops have been banned so that the supply of food reached there. Areas such as Ulundi have done that. Nongoma was looking at their plans, opening slowly, and they're going to open fully. If you look at areas of Mtuba, business people working with the police and the army to municipality, possibilities of how they actually manage the flow of people, but at the same time to give an indication to us where there are challenges so that we can work with the retail group to attend to those specific areas.
Okay, other than getting food into shops, I mean, do you have a clear picture of how many people are desperate for food, those who can't afford to go to those shops? And when you talk about security, what do you mean by that? What are we looking at? Are we getting army forces at shops or private security? How's that going to work?
Well, there is a combination of that because some of the business community do have their security that support their institutions in any way. But there has been collaboration between the state security apparatus, which is the police and the army, working with the private security in those areas to make sure that there is the provision of security. And I must say that when we talk about security, for instance, in the food logistics and the food value chain, you might need to move food from one town to the other. And therefore, the security of that movement is critical to make sure that there may not be any disruption on the way before the food reaches the intended facility, for instance. So those are some of the issues that we have been looking at in detail, but we do so working with those business communities, working with the local municipalities in those areas, with the security forces, because all of us in this period, it's important to work together so that there is no competition, but we all work in order to support the communities that need us at this time. And I must say that the president has announced that we would also need to look at vulnerable groups among our society who may not have the income to be able to even buy. That's why he actually announced that SASSA offices must also ready themselves to support those constituencies where, as well as charity organizations, as we saw the gift of the givers who have been coming to the park and help. Others are making donations available to make sure that we plug those gaps where some of the people may not have the income capability to access the food that may be sold in the very shops that are there.
Okay,
but it's also important for me to say that in strengthening that value chain, we also need to look at small shops and, not just shopping malls, but also your supermarkets and your spaza shops that are there in the local communities, because them too will require the availability of supply so that they can serve the constituencies closer to them.
All right, great. Minister Thoko Didiza, very good to talk to you. Thank you.